What's interesting about Friday the 13th Part 7 is that it brings forth an element that I don't think was present in a lot of other films. That is that when people are emotionally traumatized or stigmatized or there's unresolved conflicts, pent-up hostilities, sometimes they'll manifest in psychokinetic outbreaks or maelstroms.
But what I find interesting about this character is she's not in control of her ability. The stress builds up and then things happen. There's the release of energy and things happen. And somewhere along the line, by the end of the film, she's learned how to direct this ability.
I used to work out of UCLA's former parapsychology laboratory from 1969 through 1980. I was working with things like telepathy and precognition and what eventually became to be known as remote viewing. So that was the work we did in the lab, did a lot of work for the government and the intelligence community and the military, which is still classified. But what really intrigued me was investigating cases in the field. And in the last 41 years, I've investigated in excess of 4,500 cases, most of which go nowhere. They begin and end with one interview. And it got really depressing because most of the time nothing happens. It's like, the best analogy is you're going to the airport with a camcorder and you're waiting for a plane to crash. As morbid as that sounds, this is the good analogy. The chance of your being in the environment when phenomena manifests itself is extremely low.
There's a number of people, say over the past 100 years, who we know have demonstrated psychokinetic ability. One was, he was a psychic, so a lot of things he did was in the dark, but he was tested by the scientists of that day, and his name was D.D. Home. There's also Uri Geller, Ingo Swann. We know that Nina Kalagina was able to stop the heart of a frog.
Remote spontaneous psychokinesis, RSPK. And everyone was looking, well, what's behind this? Well, how does this work? Why does it happen to some people and not to others? Well, I and other researchers in the field, after decades of work, have collected enough data to strongly suggest that this, whatever we're dealing with, is a confluence. It's not one thing happening. It's a number of things happening in a dynamic relationship that triggers the events.
Think about it moving and make it move.
It's not controllable. It's spontaneous. No one so far has demonstrated the ability to manifest this level of psychokinesis through volition.
I can't. I told you I don't know how it happens. Sometimes it happens and sometimes it doesn't happen.
And you're lying to me!
You've got the people who are poltergeist agents. They're able to do this stuff unconsciously. Most of them suffer from epilepsy. On the other end, you have people who are epileptic and they have no phenomena around them. That means there's something in the middle, an unknown variable, a missing variable, that links all this stuff together. And no one knows what that is yet. I mean, we're getting closer.
There is a theory out there that I believe has some merit, is that psychically attuned people, or people who are predisposed to psychic ability, have gone through sort of a conditioning process where the child has been taught by experience to be more inwardly tuned because the outward environment isn't necessarily safe for the free expression of their emotions and their needs. So what you see is a buildup of this emotional energy, which in the case of Tina eventually manifests itself as a psychokinetic event. It's a pressure release valve. It's the way for the mind, the psychology of the person to offset and balance itself, make itself right.
But we had a case several years ago where the woman was having a violent argument with her husband, and suddenly these scissors flew off the wall, and he just missed her. And I said, she didn't tell me what precipitated the event. Oh, my husband and I were having a violent argument. And then she volunteered the fact that her son is epileptic. There we go again. So it's like he's the power source. And the dynamic between her and her husband, I'm sure the kid was freaking out as well, is what drove it.
So realistically, if we look at some of the capabilities of Tina, we could see that her body would probably explode from the amount of energy that it would take to do this. But theoretically, I suppose, we do know that the telekinetic ability is possible.
So it seems that you can't sit there and make couches lift up and fly around. If we could do that, the world would have ended a long time ago. But what's intriguing with all these abilities here, all these potentials, people can't seem to use it when they want to use it. Some years ago, I met a woman out here in the San Fernando Valley when I was teaching, and quite striking. Anyway, we just became friends because she had a phenomenon around her. Typical poltergeist stuff. Leave a room, come back, everything was rearranged. Fires would start in the house by itself, banging noises, books would fly through the air. We were walking from a restaurant to the car, every car we passed, the alarms would go off. Okay, the point of this is, years later, she was raped. And yet, this ability has been around her entire life. She couldn't do anything to utilize this force to push the rapist off her. That's odd. Here's a moment of crisis. She's in jeopardy. Her life might have been in jeopardy. No, nothing happened. Why? Because she was panicking after it happened for the next couple, 2 or 3 months. Constant activity. But during the rape itself, she could not put it to use, which is rather depressing. If we can't do anything with it, why does it happen?
There's a moral question to be addressed or a spiritual question to be addressed, and I think it can lead to a huge imbalance in the ego and eventually in society.
There's all sorts of theories, but there's no evidence that really gets us an understanding of why it happens and how to control it. But I have this really nagging feeling in my gut that there is a way to demonstrate this clearly and scientifically, where people will go, what's that? And then all the guessing is over. It's telling us something about who we are, where we come from, and where we're going. And I don't want to even put a spiritual spin on it. I don't want to say it's God or the devil or No, I'm not even going to I don't go there. We're dealing with an extension of the human psyche. And if the environment is right, it happens.